Aloha. So I'm here in my backyard garden and I'm going to be talking about composting, which is something that I've been practicing for a very long time. So yeah, in the 20 or so, it's been about 20 years of homesteading that I've, been homesteading in a variety of different locations, different climates, different parts of the world, both in like cold, wet areas, cold, snowy areas, cold, dry areas, and now the tropics here in Hawaii. With all those different variables, one thing that I've found like a common thread that really kind of holds everything together is building really good soil is a foundational skill that will help you in kind of any environment that you'll ever homestead in. And at the basis of creating really excellent soil is composting. So yeah, I want to talk about that today. But yeah, I just wanted to welcome you guys here to this live stream. And yeah, thanks so much for watching and tuning in. I'd love to hear where in the world you're tuning in from. So yeah, feel free to drop in the comments and say hello. And if we haven't met yet, my name is Eric D. Oliver. And yeah, I'm here on my farm here on the Big Island of Hawaii and in my backyard veggie garden. So yeah, here I have behind me an area that I've been working on for some time, and I've been working with a lot of grass clippings. Basically, when it comes to compost, there's two main components that you're thinking of that you're going to be working with. There's nitrogen and there's carbon, and creating the proper balance between the two is crucial. It's the difference between like having a stinky pile of slop with flies all over it that creates a bunch of harmful bacteria and is not very beneficial for your garden and plants, and having a sweet smelling pile that has, next to no flies or insects in it, and breaks down into really nice, rich, fertile soil at a relatively quick pace. And when it comes to those two materials, nitrogen and carbon, you can think of the carbon as like your dry kind of fibrous materials. I've been working with grass clippings from my lawn, which are really nice. It's kind of like hay. The thing with grass clippings is they do contain a good amount of nitrogen also. But what I've found, at least in this environment and in a different, kind of climate, and different kinds of grasses, you might have a different experience with it. Like if it has more nitrogen than the grass I have here, it might not work so well as a carbon material to keep the balance in your compost. But here it works great. Other materials you can use besides grass clippings are like sawdust is a really good one. Anything like plant fibers. When you think of carbon, think of plant fibers, like dry fibrous stuff. Straw is an excellent one as well. But yeah, straw, sawdust, hay. Well, no, hay is more nitrogen. This is kind of like hay, really, when it comes to it. And since this has a good bit of nitrogen in it as well, it kind of has naturally a good carbon nitrogen ratio, but it's still a bit on the dry side. It has more carbon in it than the nitrogen. And when you think of nitrogen, that's like your kitchen scraps, your food waste, your, rotten fruit, leftover dinner, all that kind of stuff. Your nitrogen-based materials are, just like your kitchen scraps, basically. Like basically pig slop kind of stuff, right? So here I have a bucket of just that. But before I dump it into the pile that I'm working with here, I want to talk a bit about this pile and show you what it looks like underneath the layers. So this is an area I've been working on for the past little while, and it's pretty deep. It doesn't look so tall because I've been kind of spreading it out. Here, let me angle this down a little better so we can really get in there. And in case you're wondering what these plants are behind me, it's totally not cannabis. It is, it's cassava, which is what they make tapioca from. I know it has these palmate leaves, which looks a lot like cannabis, which is a plant that I don't use at all at this stage in my life, and avoid. But yeah, cassava is a really amazing crop. It grows a big root like a potato. But yeah, it's where tapioca comes from. And yeah, I've got it inside this fenced in garden area here because the pigs were destroying it elsewhere. But yeah, they can't get in here, so. But yeah, let's have a look underneath the layers of this compost pile that I've been creating, which is got some depth to it. I've just been creating layers in kind of a broad area, which is, it's known as a practice called sheet mulching, which is basically creating a compost pile but spread out over a wide area. And what that achieves is like creating nice, rich, fertile ground over, you know, a whole garden bed basically, so that in some time after it's broken down, you can just plant right in it and it's perfect. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, a healthy compost pile, which is a compost pile that has a good balance between carbon and nitrogen, you basically want to create layers of your carbon-rich materials like your sawdust or your hay or straw or grass clippings, and your nitrogen-rich materials like food scraps. Manure is another nitrogen-rich material. And in doing so, creating a good balance and creating layers of alternating of that as you pile it up, it creates a really nice environment for beneficial microorganisms. It's the microorganisms that are going to break down the material into nice, rich soil. And it's also what gives the compost its nice sweet smell, and it's also what gives the compost its heat. A healthy pile of compost that's breaking down quickly, it will heat up pretty hot. I've heard of in some places where it's cold in the winter, you know, people make a huge compost pile and they'll coil up a water pipe inside of it and make hot water from their compost pile just by running a water pipe through the compost heap, which is pretty awesome. I've never done that, and yeah, but it's a cool idea. I'd like to try that sometime. But yeah, so there's basically two different kinds of bacteria that can grow, two, you know, different categories of bacteria that can grow in your pile. There's aerobic bacteria, which is what you want. Aerobic bacteria is really sweet smelling. Like I can reach in here and it smells really good. Whereas, if I put my face in this bucket, I don't want to do that again. It smells gross. This bucket full of nitrogen-rich material has no balance of carbon material in it, has anaerobic bacteria growing in it, and that's what smells gross. If like you smell most, you know, any bacteria that like smells really gross, it's most probable that it's an anaerobic bacteria. And what that means is it doesn't have any oxygen present. It's an environment where there's not enough oxygen, so it creates this like nasty smelling bacteria. And yeah, it's just kind of gonna break down into slop, be covered in like, you know, maggots and that kind of thing. It's gross and it's not good for anything. Whereas aerobic bacteria grows in an environment where there is enough oxygen present. So like having this nice dry, loose carbon material present in there creates an oxygen-rich environment for the aerobic bacteria to break down the organic material that you're layering up. So yeah, I can dig into this pile here, and it's really warm. It's not hot because it's been breaking down for a while, but it's nice and warm. And here, let's get in closer here so you can see what's going on. But yeah, it goes down pretty deep before I hit, you know, the base of the pile. But I want to show you what the very bottom looks like. It's nice, right? It's like, it smells great. It has a nice like crumb to it, and it's turning into really nice soil in there, which is awesome. And as you get up through the layers, it's a little bit more clumpy. See how like towards the top there, I squeeze it and it just kind of clumps together like a ball of clay. That's still got some time before it's, you know, broken down. It has not fully broken down yet. But yeah, I just wanted to show you the contents of like down through the layers. It's like taking a core sample from, you know, an ice sheet or something on a glacier. But yeah, so this is the fun part. I'm hoping my chicken will come and participate in like pecking at this compost. She loves it. But we're gonna dump the compost now, or I should say the food scraps, into the pile. And it smells really nasty. We've been accumulating that in the bucket here in the corner of my kitchen for the past couple of weeks, you know, in which time there's been a chance for anaerobic bacteria to proliferate in there, and it smells really gross. So I'm gonna take this stick, it's actually a piece of cane grass, and just kind of like break that out of like such a thick pile a little bit, and kind of spread it slightly so that it's not piled all on top of itself. And what that will achieve is just, you know, giving a little bit more surface area, and then we can pile some more grass cuttings on top of it. And pretty much immediately the gnarly smell goes away, and by tomorrow this pile is going to be nice and hot and smell really sweet as the aerobic bacteria starts, you know, taking hold inside the pile. So yeah, that's really all there is to composting, is just creating a good balance between carbon and nitrogen. And the best way I've found to achieve that is just through creating layers. Layer of slop, a layer of dry things, a layer of slop or manure, you know, and then another layer of dry things. You always kind of want to top your pile with your carbon materials, because then, you know, it keeps the flies off of it and it doesn't smell. So now we are left with this really gnarly slop bucket, and it smells really bad. I don't want to bring it into my kitchen, back into my kitchen smelling like that, right? What I used to do is spend a bunch of time and energy spraying it out with water and scrubbing it clean. And that's one way to do it. But more recently, I realized, and it's so much easier and more effective, because even after scrubbing it, it still kind of smells. But if you just take a little bit of your carbon material, because it's wet in there, so this will just stick right to it. Just sprinkle that in there, and it'll stick around the edges to anything that's wet in there. You just put a little bit in there and shake it around. The smell pretty much immediately goes down. It's still present a little bit, but like after an hour or so, once the aerobic bacteria replace the anaerobic bacteria that are in there, the smell will be gone. So yeah, I can just bring that back into the kitchen like that, and I don't have to worry about cleaning it. So yeah, it's kind of a cool little hack that I discovered recently, which yeah is much more effective than what I was doing. So yeah, that's basically it, you know, composting. And this is going to create really nice soil. And what I'm aiming for in this space here is this kind of, I'm doing like the sheet mulching. Not so much like a whole sheet. Like if I had a lot of materials, I'd cover like the whole area at once with a giant sheet mulch, but I'm kind of like slowly moving the pile, like it's a migrating sheet mulch, I guess is what I'm doing. It's slowly moving across the entire bed. And over time, I'll cover the entire area. And yeah, over the years, it's just going to keep getting deeper and richer soil. And yeah, I practice, you know, no-till. A lot of, you know, old traditional farming, you're like rototilling the soil or running a plow through it. That's really disruptive to the soil microorganisms and all like the sort of the structure of the soil itself. And yeah, I practice just keep adding organic materials to the top of the soil, and over time, yeah, you're just creating a really nice rich topsoil that has its structure intact, and the microorganisms are just left to, you know, do their thing and proliferate, and they keep a really thriving environment for plant roots, you know, for to grow your crops. And so yeah, that's basically it. You know, I talked a little bit about how over the years I've homesteaded in different environments, like where, you know, some places were really cold and wet, some places, yeah, like I lived in the Pacific Northwest for a couple of years on a little island off the coast of British Columbia. And yeah, it was very wet and cold there. Like there's a short summer, but it rained and was cloudy for 8 months of the year in that environment. So yeah, there was, you know, specific things I had to take into account in that environment. Or then when I lived in the high desert in southwestern New Mexico, it was very dry, like extremely dry. It was cold. The soil there was clay based, so yeah, it took a lot of organic materials to kind of like fluff it out. Yeah, and then I lived in Northern California in the mountains for, you know, 10 years and was homesteading there. And that was a really kind of, I had a really good experience farming there. It was really easy to, well, I had a wonderful source of organic materials too. I lived near a dam. It was on like the river, and they had this, and the dam would collect all this muck, like big clumps of algae, and they had this scooper machine that would ride along the edge of the dam, and it would scoop up big piles of it and deposit it, and then they'd take a truck and deposit it, you know, off in the, they had a little Forest Service road where they put it. And I discovered where they were piling it. They were probably piling it in the same location for decades, and it had the best soil ever. It was like a natural compost pile that was just huge, massive. So I'd go there and take loads with my pickup truck and fill it up and drive it up to my homestead, which was just like less than half a mile up the little gravel road from there. And yeah, and then I'd bring that into the food forest I was creating back at that homestead and pile it up. And God, the plants would thrive in that stuff. But yeah, I don't have any of that here in Hawaii. So yeah, I'm just kind of working with what I have. I use a lot of cane grass, grass clippings. That's what I have most of here to work with naturally, is both the lawn cuttings from, I have a large expansive lawn here on this farm, and a lot of cane grass. And if you've seen some of my other content, maybe you're familiar with the cane grass I'm talking about. It's thick and woody like bamboo, and it grows up to 18 feet tall. Most commonly about 12 feet is average, but it's a lot to deal with. You're just going through, and it grows thick. I mean, you can't even barely walk through it. It's just like really difficult terrain. So yeah, we cut that down with machetes and use that as a really great source of organic material and mulch as well. So yeah, that would be another example of carbon material, is all that cane grass. But oh yeah, so where I was going with that is, in all those different environments, the one common thread was really creating rich, fertile soil and composting. No matter where you are in the world, if you're wanting to grow a garden, grow, fruit trees or vegetables or whatever it is, you're like being able to master composting is a very useful skill. But yeah, so feel free to drop any questions you might have about composting or comments about your experience with composting. I'd love to hear from you and help answer any questions that might come up. But yeah, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back. All right, aloha.